Hey guys, Dead Winger here, back with another Kerbal useful craft for you. Today what I have is basically an SSTO. It's a single stage to orbit plane. And what I've decided to do is to try to make the smallest and or cheapest SSTO possible that has a satellite payload. Now, as you can see, instead of just having just a bay to deploy the satellite, I actually integrated it into the structure of the plane itself. I'll show you how it works later on after we get into orbit, but I think it is probably, a really good, well, at least a really cheap way to get the satellite up there. It costs in normal mode only 29,990, so that's a quite a bargain, quite a bargain. Now, I do have MacJeb installed, but the craft just works completely in stock. I just basically have it on to, keep those orbital info windows up. Now, takeoff is a little bit, well, you need to go back down to the end of the runway and take a landing from there because it is quite heavy with the payload in it still. Just gonna fast forward through the takeoff here and through most of the ascent because, getting space planes into orbit is always a little bit boring, requires a lot of work. Now, during the ascent, this thing will need a lot of sort of manhandling basically to get it into orbit. You need to sort of really pull the nose up, and as you get into sort of the 5K to 15K range in altitude, you will need to sort of keep the nose up and should sort of fight to keep it around the 45-degree inclination mark. I'm just gonna skip through this ascent really quick here. Now here we are, just passing 11 kilometers, going well. Sort of, it tends to go a little bit off track, but it's nothing that shouldn't be fairly easy to handle. Despite the fact that it does have two docking ports with struts, it is very, very stable. Now, as we get above 15K, it's probably a good idea to start pitching the nose down just a little bit, because you will want to start picking up speed. Just make sure your time to apoapse is stays, reasonably high. Or if you don't have a Kerbal Engineer or a MacJeb, you can just make sure that your prograde on the nav ball stays above the horizon. And here we are just passing 20 kilometers. As you nose down, your air intakes will start to pick up more air, so the Rapier engine does stay air breathing for longer as you pick up speed. So you really want to capitalize on that and get your speed as high as possible before it goes into a closed cycle. And there we are, it's just passed into closed cycle mode, so at that point you probably want to nose up a little bit, make sure you're picking up enough altitude, because you don't want to burn all your fuel while you're still in the thick atmosphere. As soon as you get above maybe 33 or 4 kilometers, you can pretty much just throttle up, because the atmosphere will be so thin at that point that you can really just don't need to be afraid of wasting your fuel. Here we are, just building up our apoapse. Throttling down a little bit because we are pretty much reaching our apoapse, and there we are. Just gonna fast forward up to the apoapse for our apoapse burn. There we go, just lining it up, getting ready to burn. And here we are, almost in a stable orbit, just gonna circularize it. And as you can see, we still have quite a bunch of fuel left, so should be more than enough to come in for a stable landing. There we are, ready to deploy our satellite. Now what we do is you just decouple basically the cockpit of the plane, and the cockpit does have RCS thrusters on it, so just thrust away from the body of the aircraft slightly. You know, time warp 2 is pretty much just a safe distance. You don't want your satellite to hit actually the head. It's quite important that you keep sort of the rotation of the cockpit exactly the same as it was to make it easier to attach it again. Then you can go ahead and undock the satellite itself. There you go. Now you will need to activate the engines, and after you do that, you will need to go into the fuel tanks and make the fuel available. As I forgot there, so just go ahead and right-click on them. There you go, and just make the fuel available. And then there you have it, pretty much just a fully functional satellite. For good measure, I did put a thermometer and a comms antenna on it, so you can do a little bit of science, transmit some data home. But there you have it, one satellite deployed. Now all that remains is reattaching the rest of the aircraft. So you just sort of line it up, you set the other docking port as your target, and just extremely carefully use the RCS to get it back into position. There we go, just making sure it's perfectly lined up. And there we go. Our plane is now ready to come back. Can take a good look out the window here and see the satellite we just deployed. It is pretty small, so kind of hard to see. Anyway, let's start planning our return. And then we're just gonna make a rough guess of the orbit burn to get back to the KSC. If you want to know how I do it, if you're in an 80-kilometer orbit, you can make a maneuver node, set your periaps down to about 30 kilometers, maybe 30.5, and then you have to aim it over not the KSC continent, but find the continents to the east of the KSC continent, and then set the periaps just beyond that, as you can see there. Generally, you will be coming down then very close to the KSC anyway, so you can make a nice runway landing. Then we're just gonna fast forward here to our deorbital burn. A bit precise about it, something that I'm not that good at, as you can see. But even if you screw up the burn a little bit, you can just go into into the map mode and just just eyeball it a little bit. It's looking good there, I think. Ready to come in for our re-entry. Get treated to a fantastic Kerbal rice here. One of the things I really like about Kerbal Space Program, it always keeps surprising me with like just how good it looks every time I play it. Now we're just gonna fast forward until we start approaching the KSC more closely. KSC continent pretty much right on target. That's always good. Just gonna sort of try to aim a little bit for the KSC, turn on the engines a little bit. Always remember when you're coming back in for re-entry, if you have Rapier engines, do remember to set them back to air breathing mode. There we go, just making some course corrections, final corrections for landing. Let's just fast forward then up to the runway. ready to land. Just try to keep it a little bit head on, you know, keep the speed down, put the gear down. And then just come in for a nice, easy touchdown. As you can still, I see, have a bunch of fuel left over. So this is like, that's a good thing about this craft. It does have room for error. And there we go, just touching down gently. Very smooth landing. And there we go, that's one satellite deployed with an SSTO. Hopefully the cheapest you can get, we'll see. If you know about a cheaper or an easier way, like let's say, you know, a smaller SSTO that can take a satellite into orbit, I would like you to show me and put a link in the comments below. Other than that, I want to thank you for watching. I will make the craft downloadable in the description, of course, so look down there if you want to try it out. Other than that, remember to like and subscribe, and please stay tuned for more Kerbal useful crafts.